Hello, everyone. My name is Maureen Fleming, and I run the research program at IDC covering the topic of intelligent process automation software, which is a whole collection of software that organizations use to speed up, improve, and automate how they run their business operations. Today's topic will cover gaining a competitive edge with event-driven intelligent automation. This is when you look at the competitive edge, you could view it as a couple of different ways. The first is that when you do intelligent automation and you do it better than everyone else, that automatically gives you a competitive edge, and doing it even faster is great too. But the other thing that I'm thinking about with this presentation is that those of you who are listening to this will think, well, this is a business technology topic or operations. What does that have to do with messaging and event streaming and all those other topics? So the goal of this is also to help you understand the investments that organizations are making to really achieve benefit to their organization that hits the bottom line, and how useful thinking about this using event-driven technologies will be moving forward. First thing we'll talk about is the accelerating cycle times with intelligent automation. Things need to move faster, and most organizations recognize that. And then we'll look at process discovery, which leads to an even more cycle toward event-driven. And then the growing need for high volume, high speed collections of event data. And finally, I'll cover some recommendations. Let's start with some statistics to begin with. In December 2021, IDC conducted a global survey, and we asked decision makers, whether business or IT, what their top business priorities were in 2022. And you'll notice that operational efficiency and customer satisfaction were tied for 51 apiece. And then innovation, which used to be a top driver, as well as revenue, top driver, have really dropped down to almost a second tier position. And so this is a significant change, and it's going to be a focus on how people invest. And also, by the way, with the decision makers, 70% were IT and 30% business. So there's an agreement between business and IT about what the priorities are. So let's go into some definitions. What is intelligent automation? Intelligent automation originated as a combination of robotic process automation and AI, sort of gelling them together to make things more dynamic and do things in AI that you couldn't necessarily do with RPA as automation. But it's evolved to combine multiple automation technologies with AI to drive improvements. And the key use cases at a very high level are improving operational efficiency and improving customer experience. We see both of those at a lower level that percolate up to those two topics, and that's where the investment is going. So it aligns with the top priorities. When we look at what it is just graphically, we start looking at an application which frequently has screen events that are captured, as well as log data that's captured. And so one focus of intelligent automation is making sure that data can get delivered to the right places, or event data, so that you can capture and make use of that data to be able to change or become more dynamic. So one thing is that people are using scheduled delivery to move into training data to create things like AI models, like a prediction or predictive analytics, or they might have a recommendation engine that they're supporting. And so that's a scheduled delivery issue. But when you move to the right hand, to the right of that other side of it, that's about fast delivery. You'd be able to collect the data in enough time to be able to respond quickly enough to make a difference in the outcome of whether the session or the overall performance of the application or the outcome of the application. And so this operational data store also collects all of this data in a faster cycle. And the actions that typically come off of that is some kind of notification or trigger. And that goes up into the automation activities, which might be a workflow, email, a bot, task, integration, async API. There's a whole bunch of different technologies that can catch these notifications and triggers and do something about it. But this combination is a large piece of the portfolio organizations are doing to automate and improve. And next, I want to sort of bring this to light and use and present a use case. And this one is interesting because it's built around the financial facts that were presented in an earnings call with investors from British Petroleum or BP in a June for their second quarter 21. And what they announced at the earnings call was that they'd achieved 2.5 billion in cost savings. And I believe that was over a 2-year period. BP generated in 2021 $157.7 billion in revenue, and they also generated about 12.5 billion in net operating costs. So when you look at that 2.5 billion, that translates to nearly 20% of operating profit. This is a huge seismic shift, and I will tell you that I had different people send me this transcript because it was significantly meaningful to be able to have any sort of technology combination drive that kind of profitability or that kind of difference in profitability. The breakdown is not totally tied to technology. 1/3 of it was attributed to improved work practices, some of which are manual and some of which are automated or improved. 1/3 was attributed to headcount reduction, and 1/3 was attributed to procurement savings from process improvement. So the first and the last, so the 2/3 of it really is attributed to use of technology and use of different practices that they described as being agile. BP uses IA technology called process mining to monitor and identify inefficiencies in upstream procurement flows to identify inefficiencies. And in that earnings transcript, they attributed the visibility that they got from process mining as a way to move forward to really identify inefficiencies. And what they've achieved beyond just lower costs is they've accelerated their cycle times along with the speed with which they're able to make decisions. And they plan to use this approach across other same efforts to fix their processes and their operations overall. So the next section, to bring this more into detail about what that use case, what process mining contributed to that use case, process discovery is leading to becoming more event-driven. But first, we'll look at process mining. So it's becoming it's a planning tool and a runtime tool used as it's becoming what I would consider the cornerstone of operating efficiency and cycle time acceleration. So what is it? It's a combination of data science and process management to produce a statistical analysis of business process efficiency. It collects the log data of all applications used in the process. And you see from the diagram that there are different applications that are just delivering log data into a couple of different parts of the system. And once it's collected that, it performs a statistical analysis to correlate, organize, and identify variance in how a process operates compared to how it should operate. Organizations use this variance and what they learn from process mining to figure out how to improve their processes, and they generate planning from that. And so what happens with use of process mining is you have two branches. One branch is the improvement branch, where you'll be applying technology to do the improvement, or you'll be fixing things that don't work well, or changing the business side of processes to make sure that everything is smooth and relatively friction-free. The other thing that happens beyond planning is that they keep it in production, and they move to, instead of a single log collection model, they move to a continuous log data collection. And that goes into this middle diagram where they're moving it into some kind of data store that becomes bigger and bigger. And they maintain a library of key performance indicators and the state of each KPI and the different calculations they need to do to determine whether the KPI is on track or off track. And that flows up into reporting, monitoring, and also in some cases it will trigger the generation of a new activity or process. What happens when organizations use process mining is they typically start somewhere in one process that they might be having, they want to improve because they are having, maybe different performance that's less than what they thought. So in this example, I'm showing an end-to-end process that's organized around order to cash. And what you have is someone maybe starting with customer invoicing, which is a common place to start, either that or accounts payable. And what happens is they mine the the process that's related to customer invoicing, and they look for where they could fix it or where they could improve efficiency. And they realize that they haven't really yet uncovered the root cause. And so that means that what they do is they go to maybe order fulfillment or shipping, and then they have to mine that to find where the source of common problems are. And then what ends up happening is they've got then 3 processes that are all operating, generating a lot of data, correlating with each other to identify problem origination and then an immediate problem. And so what happens in organizations that are really doing well in process mining is that they do these one after another to create more of an end-to-end view of this. Each of these different processes also have their own metrics and KPIs that will sort of give them a way to improve operational efficiency. So, I'm not going to go through all of these, but just what ends up happening when you start thinking about all the data that's being collected and all the KPIs and KPI stores is that each of them have their individual set of metrics that are all being kept up to date with this continuous data flow to feed into the reporting, the monitoring, and the triggering. They become, very in between the monitoring and the triggering, it becomes much more action oriented. The other thing that happens is that teams start putting together more of an end-to-end metric. In this case, this is called, this metric could shape something like a perfect order, which shows how well you fulfilled it in order from each customer. So the thing about the KPIs and the monitoring is that they're not these monthly metrics that you use or annual metrics to use in a scorecard. They're actually metrics that you populate in near real time to then trigger to see whether you're missing them or you're using the KPIs to identify problems that you then need to work on. And so this end-to-end data collection of this of these 3 things to create perfect order means that everyone is observing, detecting problems, and then improving their efforts to rapidly remediate problems. And in this case, what they're aimed at for perfect order is improving customer experience or customer satisfaction. So we started, with the first slide that said people are investing in both operational efficiency and customer satisfaction. And when you start combining them when you start combining root cause of where a problem is with the outcome, then you're actually doing both. You're improving customer satisfaction and becoming more operationally efficient when you're starting to build this sort of system, which is part of the reason organizations have been successful in driving down operating costs while also improving satisfaction. So what we're finding with all of this is that there is an absolute growing need for high volume, high speed collection of events. And one of the things that happened over the past few years is that we started to see publish and subscribe technology change, or publish and subscribe as a design pattern change pretty rapidly. So it used to be that PubSub was a technology that we used frequently for really, ultra low latency or low latency use cases, because you had to find it was difficult and challenging to operate at those sorts of speeds. And so you had to find the right use cases for it. And those use cases tended to be urgent. So you thought of, stock quotation systems and, a variety of other things, traffic control, things like turn-by-turn navigation, when you start thinking about using Google Maps and the underlying infrastructure that has to be able to propagate events. And so over time, what we saw, we sort of isolated that to sort of these narrower use cases. But what's happened is that that some of this, I'm not going to say it's easier, because it's not, but the part of the tech stack figured out that there is an advantage in being able to use something to sort of extend PubSub with a different type of event broker that could support sharing of data, so that you could have different speeds. You could have a publisher publishing events via an API in near real time. You could have a publisher connecting to the broker to send out batched events. And on the other hand, you had subscribers, and some of them were receiving information via any different types of APIs to receive it as quickly as it appeared in the system. And then they also were able to connect it, in batch as well. So generally speaking, this mixed modality of using publish and subscribe as an architectural mechanism to propagate and share data meant that people could operate at the speed they needed to operate, which means that it became more and more straightforward to be able to change the clock speed on how fast you needed to do something. And what's the result of that is things like process mining now mean that as people want to operate, their cycle times reduced, they see an urgent area where they need to respond in near real time. They basically change the cycle time on how they receive the data, and how they retrieve the data from the broker or listen for the data from the broker. So this is a significant changeover in the market. And so when you couple it with these really data intensive technologies like process mining, and then you tie it to the business value of operating, improving your cycle times, then it becomes a really good partnership. And that's something that that is important. I think that's an important takeaway for everyone who's listening to this event, that it changes the economics of being able to bring publish and subscribe technologies or event-driven technologies into business to improve their business operations. The other thing that happens is that there's an ability to combine different approaches. So when you think about an event broker, they're not, there's no universal event broker where you can go to one and can do everything you need. And so what ends up happening is that there's a mix and match that happens. So you might have something like a Pulsar or Apache Kafka that can basically collect the data and propagate the data. People can share it, in particular with log data. But then you also might need to pull important elements off of that instantly to be able to move into a lower latency or ultra low latency mode to be able to propagate that. And so what we're seeing in organizations is that, for example, they will use an event broker to send, to replicate to a target system, maybe used for analytics. And they will also use it for subscribing to different events that are coming out, as listening to it to support applications that need to get that information instantly. For example, notifications, status changes, that sort of thing. And then you also may use an event broker to initiate some type of orchestration or some kind of instant delivery of something that will trigger a process to process orders, or it will trigger some type of orchestration. So it's common, and I think we should expect to see that between all the different types of event brokers, that because it's all built around a broadcast technology, that there's no reason that they can't work together. And you'll probably end up finding that in your organization that that you are seeing those working in tandem. So I think that's going to be a forward trend as well. And when I look at it, I think about process mining as being a very analytics-driven thing, where they need high speed if they can actually make a change that would make a difference in performance. But with intelligent automation, when you're on the automation side of it, that all there's a premium on that side to operate as instantly and near real time as possible. So in some cases, you might be supporting applications that are part of the automation side, and then you might support other things that are part of the analytical side. So they work better together when you think about it. And then finally, what's next? So I don't know how many of you are familiar with process mining or see it going on in your organization. It's something that typically involves the IT organization working with the business units. The IT organization is heavily focused on doing the data collection and working with a team of business analysts, even some of the Six Sigma team, to start really evaluating how well the process works. So it's a combination that that comes together really well. So and the other piece about this too, my thinking is that if you're in an organization and you're very interested in event-driven architecture, event-driven design, it's a perfect opportunity to look for the presence of process mining in an organization or a process mining initiative and get involved, because this is where you're going to be really exercising your skills, especially as you become an important member to enable the ability to increase speeds and volumes as organizations start blowing out how much data they really need to be able to, continuously do process improvement. Just a place to look is that process mining typically begins in supply chain, in procurement, and financial operations. And those three are sort of like the anchors of where organizations are experimenting. And what you're able to do then is look there to see if there's anything, and then just assume that if your team is successful there, it's going to blow out more broadly across the organization. The other thing that's important is to align your event data skills to these initiatives. Looking at process mining, looking at operational efficiency, it's a different thing than working down in IT and IT operations. And so trying to understand more about what efficiency means in the business or the business operations tiers, it's a good time to skill up in that. And then also learning about process mining and key intelligent automation technologies is also useful. When you look at what happened, what became possible at British Petroleum or BP, your organization should be able to achieve these similar benefits on you may not be as big, you may be bigger, but on a percentage basis, you should be able to get those benefits. So it's important, it's beneficial to you to learn this because skills are highly portable. You're already likely to be highly skilled in this event streaming and event-driven system design. And then when you combine it with the up level, the things that are in the business tier that sort of represent what you could do because you're good at this, it means that you're a highly valuable person and therefore highly portable. You have a ticket that's open to you to do what you want to do with that. And I think I'm going to end this now, and thank you for your time.